we spend too much and then we are surprised when we have corporations that do the same thing, or we don't recycle, we don't reuse, and then we're surprised when we have corporations that don't recycle or reuse, or we want magic silver bullet fixes in our own life, and then we're surprised when our politicians of AI can't magically fix everything. So everything that is, so it's really about, I think, going to what do I really want, and then applying the spiritual principle that we are all connected, that there is no difference between you and the person sitting next to you, that there is no difference between you and someone 50 miles away, or 500 miles away, or 5,000 miles away, if you are exercising self-denial, denial of that which you want, you are not only withholding yourself, you are not only harming yourself, you also are harming other people. So it's not just a neutral, it's not just a neutral thing. It's not just, it's actually a harmful thing to do so. I mean, it's like, could you imagine Cinderella being like, well, gee, I really like you, Prince, and I really like to go to your palace, but, my stepsisters really like having a live-in maid. So, and we think of fairy tales as every character being an aspect of our own consciousness. So when Cinderella meets her prince, which is the same as saying when we go toward our highest good, it not only serves her, it not only serves the prince, it also serves the stepmother and the stepsisters. We needed to think about their own lives. We needed to adjust their way of thinking. But we have such a hard time applying this principle to our own life. It's like we can be so kind to others and so cruel to ourselves, even in our own thoughts. It's like we can't even spare 30 seconds to give ourselves a kind word. And this is the question of self-worth. Why do we have such a hard time believing that what we want is what we could get? Why do we have such a hard time believing that we are worth things working out in our life? And when we cannot comprehend that things can work out in our own life, well, then you talk about things working out in the life of a planet. It's overwhelming. So then you start to think, are we worth a world in which there is no rape? Are we worth a world in which there is no violence? Are we worth a world in which genocide is something that our children don't know about? Are we worth a world without hunger? Are we worth a world without global warming? And so we begin to conceptualize a better world by conceptualizing a better life. But the problem is, we have so much difficulty accepting that we are worth even the tiniest amounts of good, that when we think about really, really big good, it becomes overwhelming. But spiritually, there's no difference between something that you want in your own life and something that you want in your planet. The universe can bring you $1 million as easily as it can bring you $1. That is only a human way of thinking that gets in the way of us being able to attract that. So when we say self-interested endeavors are divine ventures, it's the same thing as saying, well, the universe works. It's the same thing as saying everything that can go right will go right. And it's not so much a matter of doing. It's a matter of realizing that when you are not acting in your self-interest, you are denying your happiness today. And that prevents you from engaging with where you are at. Because what you are saying is, well, I'll engage tomorrow after I've done this. Or, well, I'll get really serious about, the spiritual game in 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 5 weeks or when something goes really bad. So it's not a matter of doing. It is a matter of expanding your awareness so that you come to discover that the distinction between doing for self and doing for others is artificial. And once we accept that it's all right to do that which is within our own self-interest, what is the next step? If we accept that we are worth something, how then do we bring in whatever large or specific desires that we want? And this is the question of seriousness. How serious are we about engaging the new year? I think a lot of times what I see and something that I catch myself doing is I'll be like, yeah, I'm so spiritual and I'm working so hard and I'm meditating and I'm doing my affirmations and it's just, why is it working? Why is it working? I'm frustrated, I'm angry. But in those moments, I know that I am not being honest with myself. Because if I wanted to change, I would have to change. If I was really at being completely committed to my spiritual life, the world would open to me. If I was committed in every moment of my life, in my mind, in my body, in my soul, in the way I treated it, and in the way I treated others, I would have whatever I wanted. You know, there's a passage in Conversations with God where Neil Donald Walsh says, well, I've been at the spiritual game for 20 years, and yet I'm broke, and I really don't feel that well, and my children don't like me. And God says, you have not been at the spiritual game for 20 years. What you have done for 20 years is flirted with the spiritual game. You have turned to it when things were bad, and then neglected it when things were good. You have suspended your judgment for 2 seconds of your life, and then judged for minute after minute after minute. I related so strongly to that. Because sometimes I think at the end of the day, even when I've been up in the morning, I've done my affirmation, and I'm feeling great, and I'm just ready to get out into the world, am I really forgiving everybody that I could? Am I really being as kind to myself and others as I could? Am I taking 5 minutes out when I find myself on an ego trip during the middle of the day to get myself back to a place of centeredness? You know, am I really dealing with whatever weakness, inadequacy, neuroses in me is causing me to feel this way? Am I really affirming my strength, my intelligence, my divinity, all of the positive attributes that I have? So, if we are to even begin to conceptualize what it is we want in our own life, I think we must be willing, on a deep spiritual level, to be very serious about getting it. You know, A Course in Miracles says you don't ask for too much, you ask for too little. I think about this meaning, we don't even know what to ask because we have so minimized ourselves sometimes. It's like if you had all your dreams come true, you only would have gotten one fraction of what you're worth. That is true. These are the type of affirmations that we need to be doing. So there are kind of 3 practical actions that I think that we can take that all deal with the level of being, that all deal with the level of cause, so that we can then attract any one particular thing into our life. The first deals with desire. You know, it's like this is what The Secret is about. Desire is the energy that moves the universe. Are we really letting ourselves feel that which we want? You know, I heard Marianne Williamson say once that we tend to dwell in probability, not possibility. So we tend to say, this is how much I'm worth, or this is what it's like, or this is how it's going to happen. So think right now of something that you really want in your life. It can be something material, it can be something on a spiritual level, and really let yourself feel that. And think about every aspect of it. How will you feel? What will it look like? How will other people respond to you? How will you go about your daily life in a better way once this arrives? Suspend your fear that you can't have it. I mean, this is where the principle of visualization comes in. This is where the principle of daily practice comes in. And this took me a very long time to even come to a little bit of understanding about. Because I found that what I would do is intellectually say, here's what I want. So I want to write this, or I want to speak to this, or I want to read for this amount of clients. And then I would go, well, I've desired it. I've put it out there. But I wasn't really taking it into the deepest parts of me. I wasn't really allowing myself to feel the elation and joy that I knew I would experience if I got it. And why is that? Because I didn't want the disappointment of it not arriving. But it's not like the universe maybe works. The universe works. It's not like sometimes the universe keeps the planets revolving around one another. It always does. And so I learned to overcome the fear of wanting something too much. I mean, there's nothing I like about going, well, I want that 50%. Or I want that 75%. And then it's like, what if you don't get it? A, you might get something better, because you will have then shown up to your interactions with people in a better way. B, you most likely will get it anyways. And C, you won't have wasted so much time stressing and worrying that you might be miserable. The second thing I think that is important here is, are you engaged in some type of daily spiritual practice? Meditation, affirmation, prayer, yoga, whatever it is. And this is more than just simple relaxation. Are you engaged in something where you are actually changing the frequency of your brain? So that you signal to your highest self, so that you signal to the universe, I am serious about getting what I want. I am serious about resonating with peace. I am serious about attracting the best people that I can to myself. I don't know if anyone saw this, but there's a study out this week from researchers at Harvard, Yale, and MIT that talked about how meditation actually rewires the brain. It actually changes the plasticity in the brain in a way that simple relaxation does not. So I think it is important to just consider that what spiritual teachers 2,000 years ago were saying and teaching, now modern science is coming to validate. And so science, once thought to be the enemy of spirituality, I think ultimately will end up as its biggest defender. And when we talk about daily spiritual practice, I think it's so important to suspend the excuses. There is no such thing as telling yourself you do not have time to do an affirmation. I mean, that is just, that's ridiculous. Because no one else need know that you're doing it. You can repeat it 1,000,000 times in your mind without anyone ever knowing it. I mean, just think if you took 30 seconds a day to say, gee, I'm really worth something, how different your life would be. And then other people will respond to you differently. I think spiritually sometimes we should think that every single thing that we say should be as if we're on the Oprah show, as if we're in front of a huge audience. So just because someone else isn't there doesn't mean it won't affect the interaction between you. It will, because spiritually we are connected. And so I try to think about, would I say this in front of 1,000,000 people? And then I try to check myself, and then I try to give myself some affirmation that will resolve why I felt the need to say something nasty in the first place. So keeping in mind that every thought we think, that everything we say affects every interaction that we have. And if you're a person who says, I can't meditate because my mind is so busy, you are a person who needs to be meditating the most. You are a person who needs to find a way to slow down your ego mind. And it's not that your brain moves so quickly, it's that you can't forgive yourself when your mind starts to move again. If when you meditate you find yourself distracted, that's fine. Gently move your awareness back to a place of relaxation. Exercise a little mercy, exercise a little grace, and forgive yourself. And I promise that it will get easier with time. There's no failure. There's no getting off track when it comes to this. And then the third thing, and the final thing that I think is so important, after we have allowed ourselves to feel deeply what we want, after we have done the spiritual work of proving to the universe that we are ready to both attract and hold it. Because sometimes we attract something, we aren't in the right place to keep it. We aren't in the right place to hold it. And so, the third thing that we have to do is then take all of the practical actions that it takes to actually get it. Spiritually, internal and external is not as distinct as you might think. We work on preparing our own hearts and minds so that we can then go into the world and get it. We meditate on world peace so that we can then go out and vote for the right people and be policymakers in our own lives and create compassionate policies in our own jobs. We don't neglect the external world. Otherwise, it's just narcissism. Otherwise, you haven't really changed the fabric of the matrix in which we